questions that we have prepared first, and then we'll open up the floor to you guys to ask whatever questions your heart desires. Yeah. So starting off first, we have Jerry He, right here on my right. He was a software developer engineer intern at Amazon Web Services. He was also the external vice president for SACE last year. Shout out, because he was also my mentor. And so he's a senior studying computer science, and he's been involved on campus in a bunch of different things, honestly. And outside of school and work, he's just really passionate about like traveling, eating, and hiking. Honestly, this man just came from like a trip last weekend, so man was in nature. Yeah. If you want to introduce yourself too and talk a little bit about your role at Amazon and maybe just introduction actually.
Yeah, thank you, Mike, for an introduction. So yeah, I'm Jerry. I was external vice president. I'm a current senior studying computer science. And I did intern at Amazon Web Services. I was also an intern sophomore year at GE Vernova, if you guys have heard of that. Yeah, I really do enjoy hiking. I'm actually kind of jet lagged. I came back from a hiking trip like less than 24 hours ago. But yeah, I'm looking forward to answering your guys' questions.
And then next up we have Kai, who is on my left over here. Amazing. She was a system software engineer Ignite intern at NVIDIA. She's also really involved in IEEE and Night Hacks. My goat. She's a sophomore majoring in computer science, and she's planning to go into embedded software or full stack development. And this past summer, she was an Ignite intern at NVIDIA, as I said earlier. And she's also really cool. Like, she does a lot of jewelry making and loves reading webtoons. So
I think that Maya probably hit everything, to be honest. But thank you so much, Mai, to organizing this event, and I'm really excited too to talk about NVIDIA. And if you have any questions like related to how the internship worked, feel free to shoot me some. And yeah.
Okay, and then our third panelist, we have Jeff Lee. Oh, it is on. He's over here, but he was a software engineering intern at Microsoft and the New York Stock Exchange. He's also philanthropy chair for VASA, shout out. He's also a senior majoring in computer science, just like Jerry, and he's been involved in Night Hacks and SACE as a mentor and a workshop instructor, and he's just a really good mentor, honestly. And then outside of school and work, he enjoys cooking, playing tennis, pickleball, and just traveling in general.
So yeah, Maya kind of stole all my entire introduction. But for me, I recently just been really into like wanting to cook a lot more, like because I've been spending a lot of money eating out. I'm going eating out again tonight, but probably I'll try to cook next week.
And then next up we have Sergio. He was my role for SHET last year, the professional development chair, and he gave me a lot of good tips about that, so shout out there. He was also a data engineering intern at NVIDIA, and then he was also involved in IEEE as well, so we're two IEEE people on this side. And so he's also a junior majoring in computer engineering and born and raised in Miami, Florida. Okay. And he's passionate about exploring the complexities of modern software and hardware. And in his free time, he enjoys going to the gym and listening to like a lot of different kinds of music, like rap, electronic, and house music. And then he also loves watching movies like sci-fi and all of that too.
Yeah, so thank you, Maya, for the introduction. And I want to say I'm honored to be here with all you guys today. I hope I'm able to answer any of you guys' questions. And yeah, I know I like to listen to a lot of music. I was just telling Jeff that this past Sunday I was at the Antagonist tour. If any of you guys know about Playboy Cardi and Opium, like that's where I was at this past weekend. It was pretty lit. But I'm glad to be back here at UCF and rocking out with you guys.
Any hardware or ultra next year?
Ultra, oof. So that's like another lane. But yeah, I think next year I'm ready for it. Like I've been like trying to build up to it, but yeah, dude, that might be the move.
Okay, and then next up we'll do our pre-guided Q&A session first. So you can ask anyone, I'll be asking these four of the questions. And then after that we'll be doing the open floor Q&A, so please don't turn on your microphones until then. And I'll just be, if you guys raise your hands, then I'll call on you and then you can chime in with your question. But first off, I'll just ask and we can go down the line or whoever wants to go first. But I was just wondering, how was your like overall experience like during your internship, and was it what you had expected going in, or was it different?
I guess I'll start. So for my first internship was at New York Stock Exchange. That one I kind of went in with zero expectations since it's like my first ever internship. One really critical lesson I learned about it is they really expect nothing out of you. Like the first thing my manager said to me was like, "Oh, I don't think you know anything. We're gonna teach you everything from the ground up." So that was my first ever lesson. And then the second lesson was definitely just ask a lot of questions. I learned that really the hard way in like my first internship because like I wasn't asking any questions like for the first 2.5 weeks. So I wasn't really making any progress up until after like I was like, hey, I actually need to start asking a lot more questions. But overall experience was really great. The only downside was that it was in my hometown, so I couldn't get away from my family for a little bit. So I liked my second internship more. So I got to move away to a different state, really experience like not just work, but like outside of work, during that new city, like you met a lot of new people, like you network. I went out, I met some like really cool people who were in the same industry. So a lot on that as well. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of similar things. I think there's a lot of differences between the different internships I did. I think for my first official corporate internship, I would say at GE Vernova, it was a lot of the same stuff where they really try to like teach you as they bring you on board. But now I will say that my internship at Amazon was a little bit different. They took a more hands-off approach when it came to the internship. They did mentor you, they did give you resources to learn, but they really kind of relied on you to kind of learn everything yourself and kind of onboard yourself in a way. They have a very like self-starter culture. So then when I first got there, they gave me a lot of freedom and liberty to kind of build myself. They didn't expect me not to know anything per se about the team, but they did expect a little bit of technical breadth. But I mean, most of the stuff I did during the internship, I did pick up along the way.
To be honest, when I came to the internship, I was kind of expecting to just be put straight to work, like straight to the job. But my first day I came there, they had this very welcoming orientation, and they had the best matcha, like, I think it was like the matcha brownies, or, yes. It was so good, but it was like these matcha brownies. They had amazing food laid out for all the interns and everything. They had you sign your names on this like little poster, and it would say like a cohort of like, 2028 or something like, cohort of like 2024, 2025, everything, and you'd have your names up there. It was just really welcoming, and then afterwards you'd meet your mentors, and they just basically showed you the entire like facility. Like they'd walk through every single room and everything and say like, hey, here's like, the bars, here is like the cafes. And then I got, a notice about like my project and everything. So it was just completely the opposite of what I was expecting. Like I was literally like expecting to just walk in and be given the code base and told like, hey, get straight to work. This is your project. Get it done by tomorrow or something like that. But they really have this kind of like mentoring approach at NVIDIA, to be honest. Like they don't want to see you, they of course want to make sure that you're able to do everything and learn things, but they want to make sure that you swim and that you don't like sink down. And so I'm really grateful for all the mentors I had during that experience too.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna agree with what the other panelists were saying, at least just from my personal experience was as well. Like when I first got started, they at least at NVIDIA they provided us a mentor, a dedicated person within the team who would oversee what it is that you were doing, and was that person that whenever you had any type of question you could go to and ask them, and they would be there for you. For context, I was a data engineering intern, but I was an intern on a logistics team. So with my background being in computer engineering, I'm not gonna hold you, I had zero clue about what in the world was going on like the logistics end of the business. So going into it, they didn't expect me, they didn't expect me to have that. So just from my personal experience, they did a great job understanding that and building up, like having the internship set up such that It was structured where the first couple of weeks is just gaining an understanding of just what it is that you'd be working with, getting a picture of how it is that you would go about building your project, and then the latter portion of the internship being that dedicated time, such that you have an understanding now. It's time to create that solution to the problem that you'd be solving. So honestly, it wasn't what I had expected. I'm not gonna hold you. I had gone into it just knowing I would be in the operations side of things. So the fact that I got to be able to work with software, I think I wouldn't have it any other way. And to be able to apply it to like that side of the business was really, really, really interesting. So yeah, it was really grateful to have had that support, not just with respect to mentors, but also just the community, like the rest of the interns alongside you. You mentioned that you're a cohort at the end of the day. So being able to learn from folks that are around you, maybe not doing specifically what you're doing, but maybe something adjacent or completely different. Still, you're able to kind of pick up these nuggets of knowledge from others. It's really cool.
Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. That was actually really insightful. I learned a lot. So my next question is, what was a typical day in the life like during your internship? And also, what kinds of projects did you work on, like day to day or throughout the course of your internship? And how much ownership over these did you actually have?
So, projects. So as I mentioned, I was the data engineering intern on what was called the logistics analytics team. And so the team itself, they're dedicated to the logistics of the business side that NVIDIA has. So with NVIDIA, they create hardware, right? And so in order to actually have customers use that hardware, you need to ship it. So that's what the team revolves around. What I was doing was essentially automating workflows that they were using legacy systems for, or were using people to manually go ahead and do these different processes that they would ultimately need to do their job. So I've interned twice with them. The first time I was working with what were called carrier rate cards. So I'm gonna break that down. Carriers are the actual companies that move their products from point A to point B. Like NVIDIA makes the hardware, but they're not the ones that actually like take it by plane and ship it to their customers. It's these carriers. And so the way I like to think about it is it's kind of like where you go shop. You have like a Target, you have a Walmart. You have these different places where you could do the same thing, shop for groceries. It's the same thing with carriers. There's different companies, there's different carriers that do the same thing. So my project basically dealt with reading in this data that related to the chart, like the rates at which these different carriers would charge NVIDIA for their services, and consolidate that information to create data-driven decisions. That was really cool. It was like Python, being able to read in data from different sources and then transform said data to ultimately end up with this like consolidation of what we would need. Second project related to what's called allocation, which is like whenever someone spends money at NVIDIA transporting products from point A to point B, whether it be out to a customer, back to us, or internally, like from an NVIDIA employee to another, we would need to track those costs. So there's a whole process that goes into doing that, and my project dealt with automating that process, that logic, and being able to do so for this like weekly allocation process that the team would have to do and spend hours on every week, which is now something you can do at click of a button after the project that I was able to be a part of. And then what was like the second portion of the question?
Just day in the life.
Day in the life. So day in the life, I'm not gonna hold you. I don't know how it is for you guys, but like at NVIDIA, each team is different. So my team was kind of like it was they were chill, bro. Like if you didn't have a meeting early on that day, and as long as you were getting your stuff done, you could kind of just do your own thing. So day in the life, I'd say like I woke up at like 9-ish. I was like a 10-15 minute bike ride out from the office. So I woke up, I had like my bike. I bought a bike off of a Facebook marketplace. So went ahead on my bike, you know what I'm saying, had my music playing, just a nice little way to start the day, got to the office, and then I kind of just like get to the office, walk around for a bit, and then lock in for a couple of hours, and then after that, go to lunch. Most of the time I try to like see if I can set that up with someone, whether it be a friend or a new person that I wanted to meet, that I reached out to through like Slack or something, and then from there, log back in for a couple more hours, and after that, as soon as it was either like 5-ish or like I got to a point where like I felt like I was like, okay, like I'm done for the day, which could either be before or after 5. From there I head back home and maybe do something with my roommates. I had like 3 other roommates that were pretty chill. And yeah, probably go hiking or something. Hiking's really nice out there in California.
I could definitely second that on hiking, but I didn't touch enough grass to be honest. But for context, over the summer, I was on the GPU software resource management team. So I worked on a very low-level library. I can't really say. I think it's in my NDA, so I can't really say exactly like the name of like what I worked on. But I worked on like the engines for the GPUs, and we were doing a lot of like migrations because this is like a relatively like new engine that we're working on to replace the old one, the Falcon. And so I worked on writing a lot of like tests for the microkernel system that's going to be used. It's being used right now in thinking discrete GPUs as well as like Tegra. And so a lot of my job pertained to doing those tests, and as well as like reading this very poor like documentation and adding to it as well. Like there wasn't like a lot I could really look at, to be honest, I go off of. Because they kind of had an ask basis. Like I would always go to like this one specific like team member or the second specific team member and always ask them questions. And it just so happened that the person I needed to know things from went on vacation to Japan for like 2 to 3 weeks. So I was a little bit lost during that, but it was just like a lot of learning and getting used to some code base, and it especially involved a lot of knowledge I had from CS1 and stuff I was supposed to learn in like CS2. So there was a lot of like heaps, there was like a lot of queues and stacks as well as like red black trees I had to use for tasks and being able to like organize them and everything. Cause like it was just basically simulating a way that a kernel works and a way like all the system calls were made. And so I did a lot of that. I had amazing mentors. And then for the day in the life, to answer the second question, I kind of had an opposite experience. Because there's, for context, they don't actually pay for housing. You have to pay for your own housing. You have to find it. And so I actually got notice that I was supposed to be an intern in April. So I had to search for an Airbnb, and I found one by a shuttle. But the issue is that it's like 30 minutes of walking distance from the shuttle. And then the shuttle itself would take like 30 minutes to get to the headquarters. And so I think I would have to wake up at like 7 to get there by like 9, basically. Because my team was in person. So they would always be there like at 9 a.m. sharp, and I felt kind of awkward, you know, I didn't want to walk in like late, especially if my manager's gonna be sitting like 2 desks away from me. Like that'd be bad aura. I would not get a return offer. So then I would get there, I would sometimes like have breakfast, like they had these amazing oatmeal. I keep on talking about the food. Food is like the best part, to be honest, like working there. They had these amazing like oatmeal, like bar, like area. You could get like oatmeal, infinite oatmeal for $3 with like fruits and everything, like chocolate, like drizzle, like syrup, everything was so good. And I would walk in for a few hours. We'd always have meetings every single day because we would be meeting with teams from China on hardware because like they were our hardware team. I don't think we had a hardware team that we'd interact with on the actual like headquarters. Our team was very, very huge. We had like a lot of people we were talking to, so we'd always have like the weekly hour-long meetings with China, and then we would also have like the weekly hour-long meetings for 2 projects, so the engine project and then the specific project that I was in, which was the kernel one. So I'd be attending a bunch of meetings throughout the week, giving progress about like what I've been working on, as well as like seeing what other teammates have been working on. I only had one other intern on my team, so I don't regularly like hear about the posts she was doing with her project. It was really nice because you'd think like as an intern you don't really get access to like a lot of the stuff, but then it turns out you do get access to like the entire code base. You can like look at things on like GitHub as well. We used Perforce, so we had like access to like the GPU code base and stuff, and then additionally you also get to know like what your other teammates are working on, which I heard from interns at Apple that they knew like nothing about like what the other like people were working on. Like they literally did not even know what other interns on their team were working on, which is kind of insane. So there's like a lot of communication. And then afterwards, I would grab lunch with my team, or sometimes like some of my friends, and work afterwards, meetings again. And I'd come home. I'd get home at like 6 or 7. So sorry, but like I'd get home at 6 or 7. I'd have to walk back from the shuttles. It'd be very late, and afterwards I would just grab food with my roommates. Or there's a lot of events going on in California or San Jose. So we'd often go to other parties with other interns, or possibly go to places like hang out, like bubble tea shops and stuff. So it was really fun. It was kind of like a work hard, party hard kind of like type vibe. But yeah.
I will say for Amazon, they did not feed us food for free. They gave us 1 free banana a day. But anyways, so I worked at AWS. So if you guys heard about the AWS downage a couple of weeks ago, that was me. But actually it wasn't. So I worked on a team called AWS Investments. It's not necessarily a public-facing team. You're not going to interact with it whatsoever when you're getting AWS services. But basically, my team, we handled kind of the backline infrastructure for a service that allowed like our accountants to give out the free promo credits, the free cash credits. So if any of you guys have ever used AWS, like if you got free cash credits or you got a coupon to use for a service, that probably was processed by my team's application. And so for my project, they give me one project for the whole summer, and kind of how Amazon treats its interns is they treat them like a full-time worker in a sense where they don't tell you what to do, necessarily, not exactly. They give you a problem, and they ask you how you're going to solve that problem. And it was really difficult at first. I was going through a lot of imposter syndrome. So like they gave me a business problem and I had to figure out how to solve it. And I would ask my mentor like, hey man, like this is the approach I'm thinking. Do you think it's right? And he'll hit me with the, I don't know, you tell me if it's right. And it freaked me out at first, but I think that really helped me learn a lot. So a lot of times for my project, I had to design it from reaching out and interviewing like people who would use our product, the other teams, and seeing how they would use it and what they might want in the service, or to designing the system design. So I had to design like the architecture for how we're going to deploy this, the code and stuff like that, and get that approved by my senior engineers. So there's a really holistic experience, at least for Amazon, and it's really daunting, but they really give you a lot of resources to succeed. You have a mentor that I met with weekly, what we call an onboarding buddy, which is someone who sticks with you for your first month and kept you acclimated for the culture of your team. So like when the team gets meetings, or like if they say some random acronym, you're not like, what the heck is that? You can Slack them and they'll tell you. And so that was pretty much my project. I designed that project from start to finish, from the design phase where I had to defend it against some senior engineers, and then I finally implemented it and did a final presentation. As for my actual project, I was making what we call like a distributed systems like service lock. And so that's a really complicated phrase, but essentially our system, we had a way for people to create what we call a purchase order, which is basically a little receipt for like, hey, we're gonna give out $500 to this specific person. Now, the issue is if you have 2 people working on the same request, you can create 2 purchase orders accidentally, and then suddenly we're gonna give out $1,000, or maybe there's some confusion. And so I basically created a system that locks a resource when someone's working on it. For example, if someone's working on a request, the system takes that in, locks it, so if someone tries to access the request, they know that someone else is editing it, so we don't create any duplicates. And so that's what I was working on designing throughout the summer. Now, as for what my day-to-day looked like, so it really depends on team and team. When companies this large, there's no like monoculture. Each team has its own culture. So for my team, it leaned on the more chill side. Amazon does have a return to office 5 days a week, so you did have to be in office 5 days a week, which is a requirement. But as salaried employees, you don't necessarily need to watch how many hours you're clocked in as long as you get your work done. So my manager really took a chill approach where as long as you got your work done, you attended all the meetings you did, he was fine with you like whatever hours you spend in the office. So that some weeks I'd spend like maybe 30, 20 hours in the office. Some weeks where I had no work, I'd do like 40, 50. But yeah, so basically how I lived in Seattle in the University District. So I take a train or a shuttle. Sometimes I bike to work. And once I get to work, it's honestly, you have your own ownership. So I just kind of sat on my desk and worked on my project. Maybe had a couple meetings with some senior engineers to kind of iterate on my design. And there's a couple of specific meetings that we had to look out for as interns. So we had the design review meetings, and this is a really scary meeting where essentially you have like the document where you have your designs and your idea, like this is the solution, and then you get into a room of 13 engineers and they rip it apart. But it helps you learn, and then when you create a new design, it's more resilient in that you can actually deploy that design. And so we had that meeting, and then we had our final demo, which you demoed this implementation of your project toward like directors, which was crazy. But in general, I think the workday was pretty chill. We didn't have much social events like other companies. Amazon's a very like no-frills company like that. But I did grab lunch with my team a lot of times and organize some like non-company sponsored events and hangouts with them outside of work.
Well, that was a really good experience from all of y'all. I feel like I'm kind of lacking things to say now. But usually across internship level, there's like two main types, right? There's one kind of like them where you get like a signed project to you and you have complete ownership of that project from start to finish. So I had experience for both. When I was at New York Stock Exchange, it was an ongoing product that everyone was using. So I was on the mortgage division. So the product was basically like a financial dashboard that they sell to banks. So my parents actually used that product because the bank they had their mortgage through, I think it was Chase, used that product. So I was able to see their information, so I thought that was pretty cool. So I didn't really get a project from start to finish. It was that I was on that product, and whenever my manager tell me like, hey, there's something wrong with this part of the product, go fix it, right? So that's like kind of weird because you never know what you're gonna work on, like which part of the product. You could be on front end, you could be on the back end. Whereas vice versa, when I was at Microsoft, I had a project from start to finish. So there was very clear goal at each week, like what I need to get done. So I really like that a lot more than an ongoing product. So my day-to-day life, I actually made a TikTok for Vasa over the summer for my day-to-day life. So if y'all want to check that out, that's more detailed. But just for a quick summary, usually in the morning, I will have a lot of meetings. Most of my teams are based in Atlanta, so we'll just meet in person. We have a couple guys out in Texas, so not a crazy time difference, only about an hour. And then in the afternoon, I always like work on my actual coding job. That's what I would do. But there are times where I'm like, the way how they did it was like, we don't really have RTO, so whenever you want to go to the office, you can go. Whenever you don't, you don't. But I'm always there. I'm there 5 days a week, just because I only live like 5 minutes away from the office. I think sometime I will walk in at 1 p.m. because my manager don't care. I will pull like 15 hours a week on certain week, but there's also other weeks I will be there for like 100 hours. So it's a very dynamic environment, but that's also kind of why I like more. Just because it's like you get to choose your own schedule. So that was probably my favorite experience.
Thank you so much. I think this next one will be the last from our preset questions, and then we'll open up the floor for you guys to ask either directed questions or more general questions. But my last thing would be, what is something that you wish you had done starting from the first day, knowing what you know now, like having gone through it and everything? What's something that you wish you had done starting from the first day, like knowing what you know now?
I guess I'll start. We'll repeat the pattern. We'll go down this way, go back down. Something I wish I would have known before I started is definitely do more research on certain tool. So for example, at Microsoft, I worked on a thing called Azure Kubernetes Service, and I had like zero experience going in. I didn't know what a Docker was. I didn't know what Kubernetes was. So I should have definitely done more research. I spent the first week just trying to figure out like what exactly it is, how to work with certain tools. I think that's definitely something I need to work on. Just doing more research before you walk in. But yeah.
Yeah, so this is a piece of advice I've always been told, but also I've had trouble kind of implementing it. And I think it's a piece of advice that extends outside of internships, but it's really like talk to more people and set up more meetings to talk to people you think are cool. Especially when you're in an internship and you're in a company, you have like an excuse. Like you could set up a meeting with like some like director, and they're like, you can pull the intern card and they'll meet with you. Once you're a full-time worker, they low-key don't care about you anymore like that. So like, while you're an intern, meet with as many cool people as possible. Even if you don't necessarily see yourself doing that job, a lot of people have had really unique careers or really unique lessons that they can teach you. A lot of the cool engineers I met, a lot of the managers I met, even some PMs, like I'm not interested in PMs at all. They give me a lot of important lessons later in my internship that helped me really succeed, and also I still use a lot of their advice to this day. So when I first started, I was like too shy. I was like, I don't want to be annoying. Like I was kind of facing imposter syndrome. I'm like, I'm gonna talk to them and I'm not gonna know what I'm saying and they're gonna think I'm stupid. But really, at the end of the day, like just go in with an open mind, be curious, and talk to like whoever you can.
I can second that on the aspect of talking to people. Actually, the first day I got there, my manager talked to me and he was like, oh, we look for people who don't know everything, but are more so flexible to learning everything. Like they're looking for someone who's able to soak it up like a sponge. And I wish I had taken that advice more to heart, because I feel like I was a bit harsh on myself during, I was like the first few weeks, feeling like I didn't know anything, feeling like I had that kind of like imposter syndrome. Like I'd look over at my coworkers and they seemed to be on top of everything. They had like a pristine knowledge of like the code base. They had like a really good idea of how operating systems worked. And so I wish I could go back and tell myself like, hey, it's okay if you don't know everything, but that means you still have to ask questions. Because I think the biggest thing that you could do as an intern to be able to not only increase the knowledge that you have, but as well as also connect with other people or also be able to like make yourself like known is asking questions. If you have no clue what anything means, it's better to go to talk to someone, because you're just going to keep on not knowing, and it's also going to show up in your own work too. Like if you miss something, they will be able to see it in your project, they'll be able to see it in your next commit and know like, hey, you didn't get this, which I feel like could be on them for a little bit, maybe for not telling you, but it's also on you for not asking them for help or like telling them you didn't really have an idea of like how that worked. I know for our team specifically, we have like a ton of like terms, like a lot of like vocabulary. It was kind of like entering a new kind of like language or a new kind of like culture almost. Like I didn't know every single like vocabulary word for the engines, for like the GPUs, as well as even a naming system. Like I opened up the code base and I'd see something like GPX, like da 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 da, and like a lot of numbers. I'd be like, what is this? And so it just really helped that my mentor was there, and I wish I could have like gone back and like asked her like, hey, more things, or at least like tried to search in the Slack channels to answer some of my questions.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I completely agree with every single one of you guys. I was just now thinking about it, and like the way that I like to word it is taking initiative on your curiosity. And so that's with respect to not just like on a technical level, so maybe meeting with people who are doing things technically that are completely separate from what you might be doing yourself, but can ultimately at the end of the day serve as a bond or a connection that you have within the company, or a different perspective that just enriches your understanding of what the company does or what different paths may look like for your own career. But also with respect to like things that might be happening outside of work. Like I feel like some of the most memorable moments that I look back on during my internship experience has been maybe events that the company hosts. Like one of my favorite ones that I love to go to is like volunteering ones. They have like this like initiative called Inspire 365, and they go out into the community and do all these different sorts of events. And I felt like my first year, I was kind of like, man, I'm not gonna do that. Like I'm gonna work on my project, make sure that I'm doing what I gotta do. But this past year, I felt like in retrospect, it was those experiences that I felt like I was able to make the most connections at the end of the day, not just made my experience was what it was, meeting all these really cool people and having those connections, but also it kind of comes back. Like those were people that I could go back to and say like, yo, I'm working on this thing, what do you think? So what may seem as something that's kind of like outside of work, ultimately it helps you down the line no matter what. And at the end of the day, it fell upon just me being curious, like, yo, they got this event going on, I'm gonna pull up. This also, I think, relates to questions. Like if you're curious about anything, the intern card is the most powerful thing, and I swear. Like, there's no such thing as a stupid question as an intern. And leveraging that curiosity, I think, is the best thing that you could do as an intern. Whether it be with respect to a term that you had zero clue about, whether it be with respect to a product that the company might be developing that you have no idea about. That was something that happened to me. I was looking into like these different like simulators that NVIDIA has. And in a conversation with someone who was working on one of them, I found out that like this simulator was deprecated. I had zero clue. Like I was so confused. There was like this simulator, this simulator, this simulator, and just through initiating that conversation, initiating that connection, you're able to learn so much. So yeah.
Okay, and now with that, I think we'll open it up to you guys to ask any questions that you have. It can be directed towards like one person if they were in a role or a company that you really are interested in, or just a more general question that you may have for anyone. So feel free to raise your hands or like if you have anything that you want to.
Okay, so yeah, the guy from Disney is not here. So yeah, I think I have some more general question. So are there any grad student intern in your group or in your team?
Yeah, I think it's pretty common for grad students to have internships. It depends on what you're doing as a grad student and what you're looking for. There's like specific research internships if you're more a research-oriented grad student. There's also grad students who were like mixed in with the undergrads from my job, so just general software engineering, we had some grad students doing that. But we also had grad students who are dedicated researchers, so it depends on what you're looking for, but most companies do offer that.
And how about your team?
Okay, for Amazon, I can only speak to my Amazon experience. We only had like 1 or 2 interns per team, so I was like the only intern on my team, so I wasn't sure. But I do know some teams that have grad interns.
I think for grad students, usually like what Jerry said, it's mostly research, especially if you want to do like AI ML internship. A lot of time that's like more graduate, like you're at a PhD level. At the Atlanta site in Microsoft, we had 2 PhD students who were an intern that they worked on AI. There was someone who was pursuing their master at Georgia Tech, and they were a software engineering intern. So usually you would see more like graduate level for like AI ML level stuff.
Yeah, my team specifically was not research oriented, so there weren't necessarily grad students in my team, but from what I'd seen, kind of like they were saying, I'd seen a number of different grad students who were working on research from all different sorts of universities, and something that I found that was like something in common with a lot of these grad students was that their research that they were doing at the university was very in line with what they were doing at the company. So I met a ton of grad students. They're all really cool people.
I'll just say, in my department, I didn't really see any, or like maybe like one at most, like grad students, just because my department was more like software, hardware, like oriented to the GPUs. However, my roommate was on the autonomous vehicles team, which was very like research heavy, very like machine learning heavy, and she told me that her entire team was just grad students, like she was the only non-grad student intern. And so I think that she maybe had like 4 grad student interns on that team, and that department might have had more. So a lot of the grad students I think get like the research opportunities, which makes sense. You are kind of required to get like a master's or a PhD to really know more about like AI or like ML. And additionally, you still would get the opportunity to like work on a project. Like even though it's technically a research project, it still counts as a project. And I know for NVIDIA, we have like the whole project competition at the end of like the summer. And so there was, I think, a section for grad students, and then there was a section for undergrads. And so grad students were able to at least like show off their work. I don't know if they had like a whole like board, like science fair type of deal. I know for the Ignite interns we had that, but I'm not sure how it went for them.
Okay, thank you guys so much.
Hello? Oh, okay. I wanted to ask you guys, how did you guys manage to land your internship opportunity? You know, there's a lot of people take different strategies, just like just shoot cold turkey applications. Some people get internal connections. Just curious how you guys all got your opportunities.
Okay, so for me, honestly, I did cold applications, which is really lucky and really rare these days. I still think it's possible, it's not impossible, and in fact, I feel like referrals nowadays mean a lot less since everybody's trying to game the referral system. So for me, I got my Amazon internship just through the standard application process online. But what I think that did help me land it, like factors that tipped the luck scales, is I'd say recruiting really comes down to luck. I hope you will, but you can reduce the amount of luck that you rely on through different methods. So resume optimization, do you have good projects that are aligned for the role you want? Do you have previous experiences? It's kind of a catch-22. You need experience to get experience, but experience could be research. It could be personal projects. You hear this all the time. And then another thing, and this is becoming more and more meta, is attending these companies' recruiting events. Now, a lot of these companies either do in-person recruiting events or online recruiting events, and like a lot of times it feels like they're not doing anything. But sometimes when you attend these events, for some companies, they do mark you down as an attendant, which does give you a slight edge over applicants who didn't attend the event. For example, for Amazon, that summer, there was an online campus series that I just attended, and there wasn't any special invite, like, gate-kept thing. It was literally just like a Zoom link that had like 1,000 people in it, but they told us to put a specific phrase in our resume. It was just like participant of Amazon summer series, and I did make it to the interview round. So I don't know if that's what contributed to it, but I would say try to attend these recruiting events, get yourself visible, and that will help. But I think referrals are, depending on the company, especially for big companies, are kind of overrated. Now for smaller companies that have a little bit more impact.
Who here is a freshman, actually? Can you raise your hand? Okay, perfect. So I would say my internship specifically, as well as like Sergio's his first year, was Ignite, which is for context for freshmen and sophomores. So I will say the job market is very oriented towards juniors or seniors for internships. However, a lot of companies do have opportunities for underclassmen, and they will typically actually categorize it as such, like require you to be an underclassman to get those internships. So I mass applied to like, I think 100 internships in total, but like the majority of which I applied to my freshman year were underclassmen internships, and that's how I would think I was able to land this, because I would not have been able to land it if I was competing with like juniors or seniors, because I did not have that level of resume. And my second thing is getting started as soon as you can. Like I know it's unfortunately nearing the end of the fall semester, but for freshmen specifically, you want to make sure that you get more involved in clubs as soon as possible. Get as much as involved as possible in projects, because you are inherently, I feel bad like saying this, but you are basically competing against the people around you, and you want to make sure that you stand out as an individual, not only like resume-wise, but also the way like you carry yourself too, because they will be looking at our school and saying like, hey, like how does this person compare to this person? So I think getting started early was probably the best thing I had, and getting involved in IEEE, for instance, as well as like night hacks. I recommend attending as many events as you can possibly. Like I understand like there's a lot of commitments going on with classes, as well as like, of course, personal things like work, for instance, but making sure to prioritize as well, like being there in your community and being able to make an impact on those events. Additionally, I would also recommend studying up on lead code, which I'm pretty sure like everyone in this room does not really feel happy about if you're a computer science major. I'm definitely doing a lot of practices because the interviews are very, very technical oriented. Luckily for the Ignite one, it was a lot less technical just because they're expecting that since you're a freshman or sophomore, you don't really know much. But they still will ask you a lot of like lead code questions, and additionally, I also do second the fact that you need to go to these like recruiting events and company events, because they do mark your name on the list. Like they do know that you went to these things. For context, NVIDIA was at Shell Hacks as a sponsor, as well as they had a virtual event, if I remember correctly, at UCF last year during the fall semester. So I made sure to attend both, and I actually got to talk to one of the recruiters and get to know them like really well through the events, even though I technically did a good cold apply and everything. I don't know if that possibly helped me like saying like hi to them at like the Shell Hacks or saying hi at like the virtual event. But definitely it matters a lot, not just like statistics wise, but also just getting to know like the people who are possibly going to be seeing your resumes. And I think that was probably it for the majority of like how I think I was able to land it. But I know it's a very difficult process of applying. Like, you could get like so many rejections. I got like a majority of everything was just like a rejection. Like I think I only got 2 acceptances to companies during that whole cycle. So it's just gonna be very disheartening. Like you're not gonna get like a lot back, but it just helps to just keep on going. Like don't give up with applying. Like you have to apply to as many as you can. It's kind of unfortunate with how things are framed right now.
Yeah, so kind of like what Scott was saying, on my end, I originally applied as a freshman, and you basically, nailed it on the head. I'd say, from what I understand, the most important thing was just kind of like what I mentioned earlier, just taking initiative, like out the gate. You know what I'm saying? Like, as soon as you, no matter if you're a freshman, no matter where it is that you are in your journey, it's never too early to start developing yourself as an engineer and as a professional. I'd say something that I found empirically throughout the process for myself was that the project section turned out to be something important from what I could tell. Like, I spoke to a number of different folks who were in my cohort, and from what I had seen, there had been like kind of like a trend where like if you had something in your project section that was related to what the team was looking for, they would consider you. So for example, I actually I initially interviewed for what was called product development engineering. Like it was a product development engineering team. And I so happened to have a project that like related to the development of a product. In my case, it was like in high school, I created like a clock. It was like a mechanical clock. So that keyword was what led to that team like considering me and then kind of beginning that process. And even before that, I think what did kind of play into it was also those recruiting events. I had actually found out about the Ignite program through looking on LinkedIn. They had posted like a virtual session about the program, like, yo, Ignite info session. So I joined it, and it wasn't until the very end where they told all the participants, if you are applying to the program, send us, like, reply to this email that we're going to be sending to you guys. So I don't know how big of a factor that played, but the folks in like the virtual session that I participated in ultimately ended up being those recruiters that were looking through your application, and later on I got to speak to. So it's crazy how those little things like a virtual session or taking initiative and building yourself up as early as you can, whether it be through projects, whether it be through going to events and learning how it is that you should build a resume that is able to get through those applicant tracking systems that look for specific things that like seek optimal candidates, I think is what ultimately led to getting that interview process. And that I'd say once in the interview process, at least for Ignite, it wasn't as technical. Me personally, I'm not gonna hold you, I didn't even have to do any lead code or anything like that. My team wasn't, the product development engineering team wasn't as like technical as like a full software team. So they were more looking for curiosity, like that willingness to learn, that willingness to pick up something that you might not have ever picked up before. And then doing so, or communicating in a passionate way, like being able to demonstrate that you have a passion for what it is that you are interested in. I think that's what carried me, honestly, was being passionate and being able to express that to the interview.
Wow, they stole everything I said. But I think the biggest thing, there's a two-part process. First of all, you need to be able to land some interviews first, right? So there's a preparation process. Make sure, like what Sergio said, project That's a big thing. So for New York Stock Exchange, one of my projects is basically like a simple replica of the product I was working on. So and that was the one I put on my resume, and that was also the one I discussed with my manager during my interview. So having projects is definitely helpful. Going to a lot of professional recruiting events, SACE has their STEM Connect, SHEP has their national convention. Those are, I know a lot of people got their internship through that, but those usually require some traveling, and you also have to pay. So I know everybody might not be able to afford to go, but I know a lot of time, I think SACE sponsors some people as well. But locally, like on campus at UCF, we have a bunch of like company recruiting event. I remember SACE had a couple, I think it was Mitsubishi last year. They had a meta workshop too this semester. I was able to go to that. I think one I actually landed an interview with Bloomberg last year. I went to SHEP's Bloomberg. At the end, the recruiter was like, hey, this is an internal application link. Just let me know your name. And then next thing you know, I applied, got an interview. So there's a lot of resources here on campus. Bunch of professionals. Be on the lookout on Instagram. Go to all of them. Stay until the end. It might be like the first boring, 50 minutes to kind of sit through, but at the end you get to talk to that person. And if you're able to make an impression there, you'll get an interview. They're gonna remember your name. I also went to a Microsoft one last year as well, which I think that's the reason why I got an interview, but I'm not sure. You never know. All these cards you can play to get your opportunities higher, you should play it. That's what I would say. But all these advice are really great. So after that, during the interview, now you got your interview, what do? Let's say if it's a mechanical engineering internship, maybe start studying up on like the solid structure, structural engineering, all that. If you're software engineering, LeetCode, that's always the case. If you have other kind of research, Reddit is a good resource. A bunch of people on Reddit has gone through like similar process that you have. They're gonna share the tips, share their experience. I think that's about it. So make sure you prepare yourself, be that candidate to get that interview, and then after that interview, you get that interview confirmation, then start prepping. But also prep as you go.
And I know we had a lot of freshmen here, or we had a good amount. Now, it's been really doom and gloom, like guys, apply to a bunch of stuff, do a bunch of LeetCode. It's been really doom and gloom, but I want to shed a little bit of light. It's okay if you don't get anything in the early years of the college or even later. It's not going to happen immediately. I remember when I came in from high school, I was like, I'm studying CS, and I knew about these freshman programs. So like, I'll get into NVIDIA Ignite, I'll get into Google Step, whatever. And then I got rejected for like 2 years in a row, and it felt so bad. But I think there's a lot of opportunities outside of these big companies that you really need to look for, especially nowadays. UCF is really upping its game for a lot of these tech internships. I don't know if people in the room know about this. You probably get a bunch of emails, but like, for example, there's that BNY program they're starting now where it's essentially a pre-internship. If you do that class and you go through it, you're gonna get a BNY internship probably, and then that turns into another internship with a different company. You just need that first internship to get you in the door. When I was a freshman, for me, that was, I don't know if you guys heard of it, Limitless, out here in Research Parkway. It was kind of indie back then, it was unpaid, and it was kind of not really self-insuring work, but that laid the groundwork for me to land my next role at GE Vernova. And GE Vernova laid the groundwork for me to land my next role at Amazon eventually. So it's a step process. You're gonna get there. Don't necessarily expect immediate gratification, but if you continue looking for opportunities to grow, continue looking for the opportunity that this is something I haven't done before, I'm gonna learn this opportunity, I'm gonna do it. So I did TA, I did research, I did like orientation ambassador at some point, but I just tried to find all these different opportunities that gave me a unique profile that no one else had. So I think, especially if you're a freshman or underclassman, try to build that profile while you guys have the biggest advantage, which is time on your side.
So I know the CS Foundation exam is towards the end of the application cycle. How are you able to manage like applying for those internship applications while studying for the foundation exam?
I would say there are a lot of foundation exam resources made out there from like MedHacks people as well as like other CS majors. I know that our alumni Caleb, he made a website called, I think, feprep.com, which I recommend looking at, as well as if you search up foundation exam on Google, there is another website that has like the practice exam, give you like questions, and you can actually program on like a little terminal on there. So for studying for the foundation exam, I'd recommend doing that. And additionally, targeting all of the practice exams that they have listed on the UCF website or on the FE Prep website, just like doing a ton of practice exams over and over, as well as like looking at previous exams and trying to see how the questions balance out. Because I think there's a whole formula for how they choose the questions for each year. Like sometimes they'll choose a recurrent simulation, or they'll choose, I forgot what the other type of question is. Like they usually do either or. And then to bring back to your other question about the whole applications process and balancing that alongside FE Prep, I will admit that I took the FE my freshman year spring, so I didn't really have like a lot of applications going on during spring since it was at the end. But I feel like this advice might possibly help is kind of looking at things as time blocks. The way I like to organize things, I get like a Google Calendar or like a Notion out, and I like to block out times. So I'll like know, for instance, I have to work on a project for like 4 hours and then I'll stop. I'll have to work on a college assignment for like 2 hours and then I'll like stop. And I would recommend maybe setting aside like days or setting aside at least like little time blocks or hours dedicated to just like pure application applying. And you can't do anything else outside of that period. And then once that like time is over, then you can lock onto the next thing, which is for instance like FE Prep and focusing on that. Because unfortunately you do kind of have to really lock in on both, especially since they do tie into each other in that the interviewers will actually ask you a lot of questions you might see on the FE, even though it might not necessarily like be C, you might be programming in the Python, it's still like the same kind of like data structures and algorithms that you have to memorize. So I would really recommend making sure to focus on both. I know you probably have like time constraints, making sure to probably decrease the amount of time you spend in like other things during that period of time, making sure to prioritize those two things.
I will also say, you're asking about the FE Prep, and I think right now, internship-wise, we're kind of winding down the main part of it, but I think if you're thinking about, let's say, if you're taking or FE, whatever commitments you have, the best thing you can do for yourself is to prepare and plan ahead. So you're sitting in this room right now, and you know that next year you want to apply for internships in the fall. That's usually when the big thing is. So what you can do is you can start prepping your materials so that when you want to apply, it's easy, it's seamless. And honestly, when I apply, it doesn't take much manual effort. Maybe there's some mental effort when I have to think about these applications, but I don't spend like more than like 5 minutes a day applying to stuff. There's a lot of tools out there that help you autofill the application. Like once you fill out like all your information, they'll fill it in for you. If you have a resume ready, you just keep spamming that resume out. I didn't do like the 500 applications things. I really only applied to 60, 80 companies, but that's basically what I did. When I failed my freshman year to get an internship, I spent freshman spring kind of prepping my resume, finding out when companies open their applications, what times. So then in the fall, when I was like super busy with studying, all I had to do was pull up my spreadsheet where it's like, okay, this company's opening this month, let me check that page. Oh, it's open, let me just send all the materials I prepared ahead of time to apply. So if you prepare ahead of time, it reduces the application effort. Now, of course, if you get an interview, then you're kind of cooked. But also, like, that's where you just have to do priority management. As she said, if you have an interview, maybe you prioritize that over other stuff. But again, the biggest thing for me for applying for stuff was preparing the year before for next year's application season. I know it's kind of late to say that for this year's, but like now you know for next year, like if you prepare, it'll be a lot easier.
To add on to that, actually, one more thing, mentioning resources for applications. First of all, for resumes, you want to make sure that your resume is ATS friendly, which means it passes the AI parsers, because like recruiters are not usually the ones that are reviewing these resumes. Instead, it is the parser first that goes through and sees if the vocabulary you have on there matches the job descriptions or like what kind of roles that they're looking for, or what kind of like technical skills that they're looking for. So there are ATS checkers online that you can do for free. A lot of these ATS checkers won't give you a very good score because they want you to buy their product. But usually a score, I think around like 80%, yeah, 70 to 80 is really, really good. And to get your resume to be ATS friendly, use Overleaf, which is basically a latex editor. There is a template on there called Jake's template. And if you check out Overleaf right there, I really recommend it. It's probably the best for being able to get a high score of that. And two, for actually applying, Beyond that, there are like a lot of links on GitHub. I think if you search up GitHub internships summer 2026, the first link that will pop up will be that GitHub like huge like repository with like 500 like thousands of like internships available, and they will always like they always like update pretty frequently, and use that to apply to things. You also could probably use like a filter to find it. Additionally, I signed up for something called like the Sweet List. I think it's like search up Sweet List on Google, and it should be like this very cute website that lets you sign up for emails, and they will send you emails each week with updated internships, and I think it would be like maybe 50 or so, which is pretty cool. I think it was pretty helpful. It did cause a lot of anxiety. Like I'd open up my email via that, and I'd be like, oh, okay, that's wonderful. And that, and thirdly, I think using, if you're a CS major, for studying for the technical interviews, I really recommend using, of course, like the LeetCode website itself, as well as like LeetCode, which I think like describes how to do things. Geeks for Geeks also has like a very good description, at least like the simplified version of how to do things, as well as like syntax stuff. So if you're trying to like figure out like which language to use, which I heavily recommend Python, by the way, because it's easier to use during the interviews. But I'm going to refer to that. Additionally, for interviews themselves, like if you're looking at maybe a systems interview or something that's related to like C or C++, I'd actually recommend coding in C or C++ for those interviews. Like research the team or like interview process before you go into it to see how you want to orient like what you talk about, as well as like even if like what do you program in for the interview. So I did that beforehand, and I knew that the position I was I guess thrown into the pool for was mainly like purely C, so I chose to do that for the interview, and I think it helped a lot because the manager told me that he needed someone who knew C really well. And then additionally, I think that's probably that. Also researching your interviewers beforehand, because like I feel like it's bad maybe LinkedIn stalking people, but it is kind of necessary just to see like what kind of background that they have. You can look at them on LinkedIn and see like what kind of team they're on, like what kind of projects that they're working on. So if they talk about during the interviews, you could converse with them about that, and try to connect with them, because like the interviews themselves are kind of like a conversation almost. But you don't just treat it purely as an interview. You're also trying to get to know this person, and they want to see if they could get to know you and feel like comfortable working with you on their team. So just chatting with them, is like the best part. Like I remember I had like an hour-long interview for Humana, for instance, and I forgot what we were yapping about, but I think it was like the most random things. Like I was talking about his like hometown and how he really liked hiking and everything, and so that was really fun. We got to connect a little bit over that. Like I know I used to like do a little bit of hiking back in like middle school, for instance. I talked to him about that. He also, another interview I remember, like she was talking about her daughter was like going to UCF or something like that, so we got to connect over that. It's just really trying to connect with your interviewers on a personal level if you are granted that kind of like level of time. Like I know a lot of times interviews will say like, oh, I only have like 30 minutes or like an hour, but sometimes if they enjoy the conversation that they're having, they will be willing to like talk with you even more, and it's a good sign if they do. So that's some tips for interview stuff and plans.
And then I think we'll do like one or two more questions from the audience, and then we might have to wrap up soon. But we do have the room for a bit longer if anyone wants to stand around and stick around and ask certain questions afterwards.
So I think a lot of you had like internships within your first 2 years, so going into it, were you guys like nervous about it? And if so, like what helped you be a little less nervous, not feeling so small compared to like all the people around you seeming so experienced and such?
Most definitely. Like, you have no idea. This was even before my first day. Same deal, Facebook Marketplace, got a bike, and was biking around. I'm not gonna lie, like, I shed a tear looking at where it was that I was gonna be working at. So heading in, like, into the first day, dude, I was, shivering me timbers, bro. Like, it was crazy. But I think looking back on it, what really helped me kind of just ground myself was taking pride in everything that led up to that moment. Not even just with respect to the process of like doing projects and whatnot, but also like even before that, like my whole life, like thinking about like what my parents had done to get to give me the opportunity to go out and do stuff like this, like some reflection on everything that had preceded that moment, and understanding all the energy, the hard work that went into making that possible. And so then being in that moment and understanding that, I think allowed me to stay grounded, understand that I belonged there. Like, yes, there was imposter syndrome, but what I think overtook or was kind of beat that fear that imposter syndrome kind of, I think, gives me, was just confidence in that, when you make it to an internship, they chose you for a reason. Like, there's a reason why it is that they said yes to having you on their team. So from there, it just fell on making the most out of it, and at that point in time, I thought of that as just me being myself. So no matter who it was, whether it was someone sitting next to me, like someone on the way, like during onboarding and stuff, you're gonna have all like your cohort together all at once. That meant me just like getting to know people, introducing myself, just making the most out of being around all these really cool people that at the end of the day, again, deserve to be there. So it was scary, but in order to get to that point, there's a lot of things that happened, and they happened for a reason. So just internalizing that, I think, allowed me to, day one, just be myself, and that set the tone for the rest of the internship, where it's like, at that point, the more you get situated, the less anxious you might get, the less nervous you might be. Of course, it's a process. Like, I'm not saying day one I was like out the jump, like doing my own thing. Like, no, it was a process. Like, not just getting adjusted to the people, but also like the culture of being in these meetings and being vocal about your work. That'll come over time. But yeah, just being confident.
I think the big thing to realize is like, you are only in race with yourself. Like, sure, looking at around people around you, like everyone's getting more experience and stuff. I think when I was a second year, almost everybody I was hanging out with already had an internship under the belt. So I was like, oh, am I not doing enough? Am I not doing enough work? Do I need to work more? Do I need to work harder? That's the thing. You always have to remind yourself, if you can wake up tomorrow and tell yourself that you're better than yourself yesterday, I think that's enough. At the end of the day, it's like you only really need that one internship, like at the end of your college career, to convert that into a full-time. It's not really about where you start, it's about where you end up, right? So just keep it going, just keep doing what you're doing. If you feel like you're not working hard enough, put more effort, but really be at a spot where you are comfortable with yourself. So that's what I would worry about.
And I have to emphasize, again, it takes time. It's step by step. That's a process, a whole process. So you might not be feeling like you're at where you want to be at today, but as long as you chip away at it every single day, whether it be for 30 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it may be, as long as you're able to look back on yesterday and say, I'm at a better point, that progress is happening, that's all that matters.
I would say, like, even though things may look dire right now, it is only uphill from here if you continue like working and continue like putting the effort in. Like, I know a lot of people keep on repeating this, that hard work is like a huge factor with everything, but I cannot really emphasize it enough. Like, you really have to, unfortunately, dedicate a lot of your time to working on yourself, to grow into like learning everything. You could almost gamify it too if you'd like to. Like, the way you could look at it could be like, oh, I have to level up by like completing like this one problem by tomorrow, or I have to like level up by like, watching this YouTube tutorial on like React. And so you just have to continuously like work to learn and be able to grow your skills. And to be honest, I think I went into like freshman, I went to like the I remember like my first day, I felt extremely like nervous. I was like looking around, and a lot of these people were insanely like correct. Some of these people had gotten like previous internships at other like FAANG companies, like Meta, for instance, like Apple. Like, they got like a whole bunch on their resume, and it felt kind of like scary. Did you look at yourself and be like, did I actually land this like through sheer luck, or did I actually land it through like my hard work? It is unfortunately a very difficult feeling to fight, but like everyone here has like, said, you're there for a reason. They saw you and they felt that you had the potential to be able to make an impact on their team. And so it is difficult to fight those feelings, but just remember in your heart that you were here for a reason. Like it wasn't sheer luck. And I think that the best thing to do is to be able to get rid of that mindset and just focus entirely on being able to better yourself. Like, don't look at others. Don't try to like, compare yourself, even though I know it's a little bit difficult. Just focus on making sure that you are confident of like who you are and feel proud of yourself. Like again, like that was a really good like saying that she said like, oh yeah, but I feel like I wake up the next day and I feel like I'm better than yesterday. That is really kind of like mindset that you should have. And just remember that people there are, of course, if you like once you get your internship and everything, people there are not there to like judge you or criticize you or think very little of you. Like a lot of those people there are very open to like helping. Again, use that internship status just to be able to like have coffee chats with people, be able to like ask like, quote unquote stupid questions. Like they might think it's like stupid, but it's really not. To be able to like learn as much as you can and get yourself out there. And so I think that would probably be my recommendation.
I'll keep it short and sweet. A mantra I live by is just like, and this goes beyond internships, it's like nobody knows what they're doing. Like everybody is figuring out to like even like let's say like the CEO of the company, like every day he wakes up he probably has imposter syndrome too. Like everybody is still trying to figure it out. So it's okay that you're still trying to figure it out. And so that's something I live by.
Thank you so much. I think on that note, that was a really good question to end it off at since we are approaching our time. But I just wanted to give another round of applause for our panelists because I think we will still be here for a bit if you have any more questions. But if we could get everyone to come to the front of the room for a quick group picture, that would be really appreciated. So thank you.
On your back. Nah, you're walking. I'm not walking you anyway. Let me have a walking buddy. You have so many walking buddies? To the gym? No. Why are you going tonight? You're going tonight? Do you have a game tonight?
Yeah.
Did you have a game tonight? Are you skipping it tonight?
I don't know. Join us for both. Okay, come.
Yeah, you guys are being fun. Are you guys just leaning? Are they covered by this?
Wait, maybe speak to the right a little bit.
Okay, hear me out. What if they just sit in the chairs right here? Alright, 3, 2, 1.